It's my pleasure to introduce Vicki McIntire and Kristin Hermanson. Vicki is a Deputy Regional Director for the Denver Regional Office in Dallas, the Dallas Regional Census Center of the U.S. Census Bureau, with over 34 years of experience. The Denver region covers a 12-state territory that stretches from the Canadian to Mexican border and includes 119 federally recognized tribes. For the 2020 census, she is leading the Partnership and Engagement Program for the Denver 12-state region. Vicki has had a variety of papers published on survey design and data collection and has been a recipient of the Census Bureau Director's Award for Innovation and the Department of Commerce's Silver and Bronze Medals for Meritorious Leadership. Please join me on stage, Vicki. Kristin Hermanson heads the U.S. Census Bureau's North Dakota office for the 2020 census. She manages all 2020 census operations for the state, including recruiting, hiring, administration, IT support, and field operations. Kristin holds a bachelor's degree in business administration, banking, and finance, and has a professional background in sales and operations management and development, as well as business ownership. She is passionate about achieving the shared goal of the U.S. Census Bureau and North Dakota state, local, and tribal leaders in gaining a complete census count for North Dakota. Come and join me, Kristin.
Does anybody know how many days it is until we go live with the census? Nakia is not fair because she works for me. Okay, that is, I think, to Census Day, April 1st. We actually go live on the internet on March the 12th. So that is a mere 39 days from now when people can log on or call to respond to the census. Some people will actually get paper questionnaires that day, and they can respond by paper also. I want to acknowledge my staff again, so if they'll stand up, if you're a partnership specialist, not introduced previously is Nakia Cooper. She runs our 12-state media team, fantastic journalist, so she's going to be talking on that media panel in a little bit. Blanca, you're not standing up. Blanca supervises North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska outreach efforts across those 3 states. And Du Marie wasn't introduced earlier, but Du is another tribal specialist that primarily is focused on the South Dakota tribes and their outreach efforts there. So here's kind of a little map of where we are. We started a couple of years ago with everybody's involvement in getting our address list put together, where everybody resides, even in group quarters, those type of situations, along with all of our housing structures. So that's the basics and the foundation of the census, and that's where we started. We established where we were counting everybody, and we're going to talk about the people that are experiencing homelessness and how we get those people counted as part of our group quarters operations. So we'll talk about that a little bit this morning too. We're in the Motivate to Respond stage. How many of you have seen an ad on TV? So some of you have seen ads on TV. We started our national advertising campaign on the 14th of January, hitting our culturally diverse markets first. Our mass media campaign starts the 2nd week of February, where you will see a lot diverse, hitting our communities that are diverse, mainly English-speaking communities. Starting the 2nd week of February, you'll see stuff all over. Right now, we're hitting our cultural markets because they need to hear the messaging more. Our diverse mass actually, like I said, starts the 2nd week of February. So you will start seeing more and more advertising and commercials for the census as we go forward. So we're motivating everybody to respond. When did I just tell you SelfResponse starts? March 12th, and I'll give you the little rundown of how people will get invited in just a minute. That starts March 12th, and they have until when to self-respond? Actually, they have all the way till July 31st. We don't want people to know that because it's not like your term paper where you procrastinate till the end. We really want people to self-respond no later than the beginning of May because we start knocking on doors May the 13th. People who don't self-respond, we have to go in person and collect their information. This is a census. So that means we have to have data for every single housing structure or the fact that it is vacant. So when you hear response rates, people sometimes get confused and think, oh, well, we only got a 75% response rate. You missed 25% of us. No, what it means is 25% of you, we had to go in person to get the information. So the response rates you see for the census are self-response rates. That's how many people are self-responding to the census. It's important because the data quality is so much more accurate if people self-respond, and it doesn't cost you, us, taxpayers, all the money it takes to go door to door, because that is the most expensive thing we have to do in the census. So we're really trying to get people to self-respond. The cool thing about this census, though, is that because we're online and we have the phone, and we are now giving automated daily assignments to our enumerators, unlike the maps and the binders we had the last census. I don't know if any of you worked as an enumerator or a supervisor of enumerators. We had binders and maps last census. There was no way to pull our people out of the work stream that might have sent in a paper questionnaire late. This time, we have that ability. That's why we're leaving self-response open. Once people self-respond, then we'll pull them out of the work stream so that we don't have to go to their house and collect the information once we've gotten it from them. But our goal is really to get everybody to self-respond before we have to start knocking on doors. But they will have the capability all the way till the end of July when we're done, which is another great message that can go out in July. Hey, if you don't think you were counted, you never answered your census form, nobody ever came to your house, it's not too late. You can still go online without an ID or call the phone number and respond to the census. So that's different, and we'll cover some of that as we go through our workshop today. We actually started group quarters today. We're doing advanced contacts to group quarters. These are institutions where people live together. Usually the facility is run by a different organization. This includes nursing homes, college dorms, detention centers, prisons, those type of facilities. We're doing what's called advanced contact. Kristin and her staff has started this today, calling these facilities, talking to them about how they want to enumerate the people that reside in that facility. We can take records from them, we can take electronic files, so it just gives the group quarters facility a way to talk to us about how it's going to best capture who is residing at their facility on April 1st. So that work started today. Like I just mentioned, people don't self-respond. We have to do what's called non-response follow-up. You might hear that called NARFU, or what, there's people pronounce it different, but I call it NARFU. It's non-response follow-up. And that starts March 13th. It lasts until the end of July. We'll be knocking on doors up to those households that don't self-respond. May 13th. I'm sorry, did I say March? March 12th is self-response start. May 13th is non-response follow-up. Thank you for catching that. And then we have to deliver the counts to the president no later than December 31st, 2020. That's not a whole lot of time to turn our counts around and get them delivered for reapportionment. We are then required by law to deliver counts to the states for redistricting by March 31st of 2021. That's when the real great data sets become available to help you start doing planning and redistricting in your states, but it's also the first really good look for people wanting to know updated population numbers, those that are writing grants. It's their first look at data that helps with all that process. Yeah. Early Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna talk about early non-response in just a minute, so I'll hold that question. Thank you, Erin. So self-response, this time we get online, by phone, or by paper. It's the first time we've offered the phone and the internet option. Last time there was a phone number to call if you had questions about filling out your paper form, but we didn't take any data over the phone. So this time we're taking data over the phone if you care to. We have Spanish is highlighted because the only bilingual document we provide in letters or paper questionnaires is in Spanish. We do on the internet and by phone, and on phone we have live agents. It's not a robo type deal. We have live agents. You see in the purple color type, we'll offer those 12 languages in addition to Spanish and English. And then in the gray little languages there, we have 59 additional language guides that people can actually see online, help for their, in their language on how to fill out the questionnaire. We have recently released some new video and interactive things on the internet where people can go actually look at the questionnaire, see what's on the questionnaire, see what you're going to be asked. Watch a video on navigating through the online questionnaire and how that works. It's not real complicated, but it might give people a sense of reassurance on exactly what they're going to be asked and required to report on the census. It's less than what you put when you sign up for your Amazon Prime account. So when people say you ask so much private information, actually the census doesn't ask a whole lot of information. Your Facebook account and your phone probably has more information on where you are and what you are than what the census actually asks on there. Okay. Timing of group quarters, I mentioned, we've started this. The census operations are real and we're already doing stuff. We started advanced contact today that runs for about a month. It's getting ourselves organized so that we can actually do the count at these facilities. We do domestic violence shelters too. Kristin has a staff that has secured information about where those exist. We handle them very carefully. Not a lot of our staff even knows where they exist because we want to provide that protection for people who might live in those type of things. We have what's called service-based enumeration and transitory non-sheltered transitory locations that are called tinsels, and that's where we actually do the count of people that are experiencing homelessness. Some of you may be involved with our partnership specialists in getting lists together of where these types of people reside. Including motels and hotels, which are part of our transitory location operation, people that are actually living there all the time, and it's not just because they're here out of state like I am for a couple of days. So we're working with you all on some of those locations to make sure that we get all of those folks counted. A great thing that you all need to do and what we all need to do in educating our communities is if you have friends or relatives that are just temporarily staying at your house because they have no other place to stay, or they're couch surfing because they have no other place to stay, they need to be counted at your house if they have no other place to stay come April 1st. So if they're there April 1st, my son has one of those, a couch surfer that was a friend. I'm going to stay there for 2 weeks. 6 months later, he's still living on the couch. My son doesn't really want him in the house. He doesn't really want to be there, but guess what? If he has no other place to be, he needs to be counted there. And we miss those type of people. So good education thing. We do transitory locations, which happens to be places where people pay to stay. Our RV parks, our hotels, motels, those type of facilities. We have special operations to get those people living in those type of places. And we do some advanced work on making sure we have those places identified before that happens. And I think Kristin might cover that more in her presentation just a minute. So we have, some of you might have gone online and seen our response area outreach mapper. It's online at census.gov. It's called Roam. And it actually shows down to the track level what we anticipate your score is on the probability of people self-responding. Really useful tool because some communities definitely need more messaging and outreach because they're more highly mobile, and there's other factors involved with this. The response rates from 2010 also were involved with coming up with this data set so that we can focus our efforts on certain areas we know that are less likely to self-respond so that we can get better messaging and better education out there before it happens. We will have a very similar map like this that starts coming out with self-response. So you can track your own community and how well people are self-responding to the census after we start on March the 12th. I know there's a couple of places in here that have already created a challenge with each other, which I think is great and fun, because we have different layers so that you will get self-response at different levels throughout. And I know I'll be watching the state self-response, because the goal for my entire region is to have the top 12 states in self-response out of all states. So that's our goal, and all those working on partnership know that's our goal. But working partnership and getting community involvement will make that difference. So people are going to be invited to respond either by mail. In a lot of North Dakota, on a lot of our tribal nations, we will be doing what's called UpdateLeave, and I'll talk about that in a minute, which means we will hand deliver the invitation to respond, because people don't get mail delivered to their house, or specifically to their address. We do not mail to P.O. boxes. And the reason that we don't mail to P.O. boxes is because you can keep your P.O. box and move. Part of the census is making sure we count everybody only once and in the right place. And so we have to, if we're delivering invitations to respond with an ID number, it has to be tied to a physical structure on the ground. P.O. boxes are not. So if you get mail through P.O. boxes, you're not going to get an invitation to respond through a P.O. box number. It will then most likely be through our UpdateLeave operation. So here's our mail strategy. We cannot drop millions upon millions of pieces of mail in the Postal Service all on the same day. So good to know that not everybody is going to get their invitation to respond by March 12th. Okay, we will drop a huge amount of mail in the mail stream at the beginning of that week, but don't freak out if it's Friday or Saturday and some of your friends and relatives got their invitation, you haven't gotten it yet. You can see here that it will take us some time to mail out all of the mail pieces. Everybody will get 2 mailings. If you're getting mail pieces, you will get 2 letters. You're going to get mailing 1 and a mailing 2, no matter what. Starting with mailing 3, if you've got on right away or called right away and self-responded, we'll pull you out of the mail string so that you stop getting mailings from the Census Bureau. All right, but everybody will get 2 if you're in an area where we're using the mail invitations to respond. We have 2 different batches of types of mail out. So if you're in an area with good connectivity and an area where you're likely to respond, the first mailing to you is only going to be a letter with an ID number and how to respond online or on the internet. We're trying to save trees and paper as part of the federal government. So if you're likely to have those 2 conditions and respond, we're not going to send you a paper questionnaire. You won't get one until mailing 4 if you haven't self-responded. In areas where there is poor internet connectivity, or there's likely a population group that's not going to respond, self-respond willingly, based on our data, we will send the paper questionnaire and letter the first mailing. So some people will get a paper questionnaire on the first mailing, and that might be in a lot of North Dakota because of the fact that the internet connectivity is not great. We do have interactive maps online that shows whether you're in internet first or internet choice mailing, which means you either get a paper questionnaire right off the top or later. We also have an interactive map online that shows where we're doing UpdateLeave versus mailing questionnaires. So those are good things if you want to look online to see your specific community, whether it's going to be coming in the mail or whether somebody's going to drop it off at your house. As you can see, we will be continuing to mail stuff out. So people, if you're like me and you put the non-urgent stuff on the end of the kitchen counter because it's not a bill, then you forget about it until you see another reminder, or you hear on TV, hey, somebody's going to start coming to the door. And then you're like, oh, I don't want anybody to come to my door. Where's that census letter that I haven't gotten to? And then I go to my pile on the end of the counter. So it's not too late. So UpdateLeave, let's talk about UpdateLeave. That starts March the 16th. We start delivering questionnaires to the door on March the 16th. These are in areas where we couldn't mail the invitation. We will be hiring people in the community to go out and list the housing units in that community and drop off a response packet that contains the letter with the ID number to self-respond on the internet, the phone number to call if they'd rather call, and the paper form if they'd rather do it by paper, and a return envelope with postage paid for mailing back that paper questionnaire. So they'll have all three choices left at their house. And that will continue until April the 10th. Again, we can't hire enough people to drop off all of the questionnaires at households on the same day in March. It will take us about 4 weeks to hand deliver all the paper questionnaire packets. All right, so one of the strategies that we're using for the 2020 census is called mobile questionnaire assistance. This is both our partnership program and partnering with our partners like yourselves in the room to add support and assistance to our residents out in the community. We will have, some of you already have sites set up, libraries and community centers that have said yes. We have computers that anybody that wants to come in and use our devices can do that here to respond to the census. You don't have to. When you were talking about online response, I always said, somebody asked me this at one thing, they said, well, I don't have any internet connection at home to respond to the census. I always go to the coffee shop to log onto my phone to get to the internet. Well, guess what? You don't have to fill your questionnaire at your physical home location. You can take your phone or your device down to the coffee shop and answer that form there. I don't know why people have this notion that, oh, I have to be sitting at home to answer my question about my home and how many people live here. No, you can take your device down to the coffee shop and answer your questionnaire on your device at the coffee shop. That doesn't matter. So a lot of our community members are doing things like setting up questionnaire assistance sites. We're also hoping to have a lot of events where we encourage people to come and respond to the census. I think a lot of our tribal nations are talking about having some sort of gathering where maybe the tribe is providing a hot dog lunch or something, come respond to the census. Some of the census employees will be there with an iPad that you can actually use and respond to the census while you're there, those type of situations. We'll just be there, both our partners or ourselves, just to answer questions about the census, about how safe it is, what the census data is used for, why it's important, just general information to residents in the community that might have questions about why we do a census and how important it is if they haven't heard that word. We will also be monitoring towards the end of March, we'll start monitoring real time how much self-response is coming in versus our predictive models on how much we expect, and where there is a gap between what we expect to be happening at this point in time and what's actually happening, we will actually deploy people and work with local partners on where we need to set up self-response or get better word out to the community that this is really important if it's not coming in where we expected. And this will happen in communities where we thought self-response would be no problem at all, and all of a sudden we expected that they're at 5%, and really that community, we expected them to be at 20. Something's going on. And so we'll be watching that and working with community partners like yourselves to let you know what's going on and what can we do to maybe educate and ramp up efforts to get people to self-respond. We do have a new questionnaire assistance guide and resources available through our partnership specialists now that talks about what self-response is, the types of questionnaire assistance, what Census is providing, what you all can do as help, the language support programs we have in place, the media support strategies, some of which you'll hear from Nakia. We've got some really cool, especially social media support. That's really big and changed and different from last time. And then some important stuff for American Indian and Alaskan Natives, and then just a whole page of helpful links on all sorts of stuff. So that's available from us now too. We will start going door to door starting May the 13th. Somebody asked about early non-response follow-up. College kids are counted where they go to college because they're at that college basically 9 months of the year. And our residency rules say you're counted where you spend the majority of your time, so that's 6 months and a day at least, that you spend your time. We also know that college kids disappear in May when school's over. And we don't want to miss the college kids, those living off campus, because of that. We don't worry about the kids living in dorms because that's part of group quarters, and we get and account for them through our group quarters operations. They don't go, the kids in dorms don't go online and answer the census form. They're counted through the residence hall program and the group quarters operations we have. But those living off campus is who we miss, especially those who have the apartment with 3 on the lease and there's 5 guys living there. I know, my son done it. So the right answer for the government's 3. My landlord's gonna find out, and I don't want my landlord to know there's 5. Well, the message those working college communities is your landlord is not gonna find out, and you need to report the 5, because we have to provide the infrastructure, roads, healthcare for all you college kids. We need to know there's 5 of you here. We also need to make sure you get counted before you get involved with finals and run away for the summer or go back home or wherever you're going. So we start non-response follow-up around college campuses on April the 9th. So we will start knocking on doors starting April 9th around college campuses to make sure we don't miss those college kids. Now, if they self-respond between March 12th and April 8th, we probably won't knock on their door, but we need them to we'd rather have them self-respond than have to knock on the door. All right, we will continue knocking on doors till we make sure we get everybody counted. We go door to door on starting about the 4th visit that we've been to a household. We start trying to get information from a knowledgeable source, a neighbor, an apartment manager, because we do have to have either that a unit was vacant on April 1st and nobody lived there, or an associated population count for that housing structure. So we will go to a neighbor and say, do you know how many people live next door? And I could tell you, in my neighborhood, I could tell you there's 4 people that live next door in that house. I couldn't give you their exact ages of the kids or the parents. I could ballpark it, and that's what we'll take. It's better than no data at all for a housing structure. So we try to get as much demographic information as we can, along with the number of people living there. In some communities, that's difficult because you might have an apartment complex and you see people coming and going and they're different people. He's like, well, how many people live in that unit? And if you go to the housing manager, they'll tell you 2 because that's how many's on the lease. But then you go to a neighbor and they'll say, oh, I think there's 6 or 7. I don't know because there's so many come and go. That's why we really prefer self-response. But we do have to have some information for every single housing structure that exists. All right, so then after it's all over, we've got some new great tabulation dissemination platforms coming out once we have our census data. We know people like visual and graphics. We're trying to become more of a visual-friendly, graphical dissemination agency that's cool, so that people, even the general population, love to use our data, because if you're a data geek, you love our tables, and we got a lot of data and a lot of tables that are hard to manipulate, but we're trying to become a friendlier and more intuitive type situation so that those data will be released on a new platform once we get to the end of the census. So I'm going to turn it over to Kristin and let her talk about that, and then we'll be opening it up to questions from you all.
I'm going to actually talk a little bit today about a big job that we have in North Dakota relating to the census, which is recruiting. So just quickly, would you raise your hand if you within your organization are involved at all with recruiting or hiring for your organization? Anybody? Yeah. So a lot of us are. So if you've been involved in that in the past few years, have you experienced any challenges in hiring or recruiting for your organization? Anybody? Yes, all of us have. That's right. Yep. So all of us who have been hiring in North Dakota know how hard it is. So what I'd like you to do is think about the challenges that you've experienced relating to that and take that times 1,500. Right? So that's what we're trying to do in North Dakota. It's a difficult thing to do, and we face a lot of challenges, for good reason, because we have a great economy here. So we don't have unemployment. Everybody who's working as many jobs as they want at this point. So we have to kind of take a different, I guess, look at things a little bit differently when we're recruiting here in North Dakota. So I'm going to cover a little bit of that information, as well as some of the things that you as community partners are in a position to do to help us with that. So, okay, so positions with the census in North Dakota. So all the positions are temporary, of course. We're hiring for in two different areas. So that includes the area census office here in Bismarck. So we have a staff goal of about 80 people here at the office in Bismarck. Some of the positions that we're hiring for that include clerks, supervisory clerks, operations supervisors. So what those positions, those staff do at the office here is supporting the field operations. Right now we're hiring, making offers for positions all across the state. We are putting the systems in place to pay those people, to process all the HR requirements, and everything that's involved with that. Also, as Vicki kind of mentioned, there's a big goal of electronic response on the census this time. That means that there is a heavy IT component to census operations at this point. So we have a much increased IT staff that's operating out of the Bismarck office as well. So we are still recruiting for those positions. Those are mostly full-time positions, but as we approach kind of the peak operations, we will have availability for just night and weekend positions, because as we have people out in the field, they will need to be supported. They'll have questions, they'll need assistance. So we will run the office evenings and weekends, and we'll need clerical staff to staff at that time as well. Now, our 1,500 number, that is the statewide need for field employees. So some of those positions include the census field supervisors, the enumerators or listers, which are the census takers, and then recruiting assistants. So recruiting assistants have already been working out in the field since early last year, trying to tackle this big goal of getting all the employees that we need across the state. So we are mostly winding down on hiring for those positions, and we've also made offers for most of the positions for the supervisors. So we are now transitioning into the phase where we're training those supervisors. So our ongoing need for applications is still for the enumerators. We still need people in every county in North Dakota. So please spread the word with your organizations and your communities that we are continuing to take applications. Pay ranges for those positions range from $18 to $23 an hour. And the field positions have flexible schedules. That's an important element in North Dakota, because everybody who wants a job has a job. So these are positions that will fit for people who already work full-time and maybe have evening and weekend availability only. We do encourage those people to apply as well. That's the only way that we'll ever get to where we need to be, is by making sure that those people are applying for the positions as well, not just our unemployed, not just our young people right out of college. We really need even those who are already working full-time to apply for the positions. So the next thing I'm going to cover is some of the reasons that a person would want to work for the census. As I just discussed, the flexibility of the jobs is a big part of it. It's easy to combine with other jobs or school. We do have supervisory and entry-level positions available, and there's no industry-specific experience required. So we will provide all the training. It's very detailed training that is provided. One of the educational components that's really important to relay to gain interest in the positions are some of the things that the reasons that you all are here. You already are aware of why it's important in North Dakota. So it's important to kind of place that education piece in as we are recruiting for positions to inspire people who maybe don't need another job, but will do it because they know it's important in North Dakota. So some of those are that it directly affects yearly funding for schools, roads, hospitals, and highways. You're able to work in your community among your friends and neighbors, and it's an excellent source of additional income. One thing that I will note, because we really need every applicant that we can get across North Dakota, is you do enter your availability day by day. So that's important, I would say. For example, in Brent's old hometown, where there's a lot of oil field families, where maybe the spouse has availability at certain times, maybe for a week on, week off schedule. You can enter your availability based on that. So maybe one week you're available a couple days, the following week you're available the entire week. So it will work with those types of schedules. It doesn't have to be a set schedule. So that's an important note. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about the hiring requirements for the positions. So the requirements are you must be at least 18 years old. You must be a U.S. citizen with a valid Social Security number. You must be registered for selective service. You must have a valid email address. So applications are only taken online this time. So you do need a valid email address. That's how we communicate a lot of the follow-up information, including facilitating your background investigation and things like that. So an email address is required. A skills assessment is required for certain positions, mostly the supervisory positions. You must complete and pass a background investigation. You must have access to a car. That's a definite in a rural state like North Dakota. You do need to have access to a vehicle. You must be available to work days, evenings, and or weekends depending on the position. So if for supervisor positions, of which we have already made a lot of the offers in North Dakota, we do lean towards a lot more daytime availability depending on the operation. As we get into the non-response follow-up phase, that's going to be a lot more flexible for those evenings, weekends, and kind of the variable schedule. So we encourage everyone to apply. We will call and make offers based on a match with the operation to a person's availability. And finally, the Hatch Act applies, so that just limits the political activities while you're on federal duty. Next slide is how to apply and when. When you should apply? Now. Like I mentioned, we are already, as we speak, hiring hundreds and hundreds of people across the state. We will continue to take applications. We're in the final phase, so probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, we can still accept applications, and we will continue to do that, but we are making offers right now. Applications are online, so that's going to be at the 2020census.gov/jobs is the website for that. We've also just received a newer avenue to send out applications. That's the text ND jobs to 313131. That sends it a direct link to your mobile device that links to the application. So that's kind of a cool, different way to get the application in front of people, especially as our recruiting assistants are out working events and they can get an application to a person's phone just right away. You can also call the jobs hotline. You won't be able to apply directly through that, but if there's questions, you need additional information, then a person can call that number. And once again, please apply today or let people know that we do need applications as soon as possible. Okay, if a person has questions about recruiting, once again, you can call the jobs hotline. When you enter in your zip code, that does go directly to our office. Clerks are available to answer questions. These can be questions about what's the status of my application, what additional documentation is needed for a veteran's preference or other things. Actually, the 2020census.gov/jobs has a lot of information. So if people in your community have questions about applying, want to know about job descriptions, benefits, there's a link on there where you can do a drop down for the state of North Dakota and each individual county, and it will list the pay rate for that county. The FAQs are very thorough on there. So I encourage, if you do have questions or if those in your community have questions, please direct them to that website. There is a lot of really good information on the website there. So finally, I'll talk just a little bit about some of the things that you as community leaders and organization leaders can do to help with recruiting. As I mentioned, we're in our last phase of recruiting, so we've got about 4 to 6 weeks left. We are not where we need to be as far as our recruiting goals in North Dakota, so we are asking for help from all of you. One element that's been new again this year with the technology is our ability to use social media. This has been very effective. So when we look at our results from our recruiting sources analysis across the state, social media is at the top. That's where applicants are seeing the advertisements and clicking and applying for jobs. They're citing that on their application that that's where they saw or heard about the job. So you all have a unique ability to help us with that because you probably have social media accounts for your organization or for your community and ways to get in front of potential employees. What we find is that it's more effective because it's coming from the community level. So they can say, oh, this is important to my library, to my school, because they're posting about it. So it does get better engagement even than anything that we can do. So that is one area where I asked if you have the willingness and ability to do that, please go ahead and put out information on your social media channels regarding recruiting and ask people to go ahead and apply for the jobs to support your community. It also has that element of education that's going to lay the foundation for SelfResponse as well. So it starts to help people become aware of why it's important and why we need to fill the positions. Also, in closing, we are also interested in any information that you would like to provide about how we can reach applicants in your community. Every community is different and has a different dynamic. If you have ideas about events or areas where we can help promote these positions in your community, please communicate that with your partnership specialist. We would be happy to work with you and appreciate the feedback on that. So, and that's what I have for recruiting. Thank you very much.